You want to go all in, but don't know how. And how could you? Because you've been all out most of your life. And I'm here for you today because you're not alone. And that's the framework for this talk. For after this video, you will have no doubt about how to go all in. And to begin is again by accepting that you are currently all out. And don't run from it, but leverage it and design by writing down the all out or anti version of all in. This is the person you clearly don't want to be. And the impetus here is to absolutely generate fear and anger as a spark. And if you didn't know, anger and fear are massively powerful energy forces, and there's nothing stopping you from using them to your advantage. So, specifically, let's start phase one by imagining who you don't want to be. I personally would define that as someone who doesn't know who they are. And if you let that line process, you realize just how scary and palpable that is. But essentially, we are starting our all-in process by creating the all-out anti-version of you. And this is a powerful process that allows you to consciously, through concentrated awareness, write down, and yes, it should be a writing exercise, you write down the all-out anti-version of you. How does this person who you don't want to be look physically? For me, it was when I was overweight, right? How does the person who you don't want to be talk? How do they walk? What do they listen to? What do they watch? What is their belief systems and core values built off of? How much money, or in this case, how much money don't they make? What are their moods like? How are they feeling emotionally on a day-to-day basis? What are the type of conversations you're involved in? What do they do for a living? If it wasn't clear, this should be an extremely vivid and descriptive process. The more so, the better. Details, details, details. And ultimately what you are doing by creating the all-out anti-you is simultaneously creating the all-in new you, because the math says if you clearly know who you don't want to be, then you can clearly determine who you want to be. All right. Now that you have this version written down and imprinted on your brain, you're all hyped, excited, maybe a little angry. Let's move to phase two, which is to learn the principles of deep work. And I guess this will be a preface. But if you are here and somehow believe that work, and a lot of work, isn't required, just don't bother. And if I still have your attention, then learning the principles of deep work will actually ensure you work harder, but smarter, ultimately dedicating at least an hour a day of deep work just to yourself and the all in. And that'll bring about the change you see, at least in my experience. So here are the principles for deep work. By definition, Carl Newport, he's a computer science professor at Georgetown. He's also the author of the Deep Work Rules, defines deep work as the following: a state of distraction-free concentration when your brain is working at maximum potential. Imagine that. Let me give you some examples of deep work versus what the alternative would be, which is shallow work, to make it make sense. Deep work, undistracted, deep concentration. Deep work, create new value. Deep work, learn a new skill. The alternative, shallow work, not mentally demanding. Shallow work adds less value. Shallow work, full of distractions. Are you following? Here's additional deep work principles to continue making it make sense. Deep work, single tasking. Deep work, brainstorming ideas. Deep work, researching knowledge articles. Shallow work, multitasking. Man, that's a myth. Replying to emails. Shallow work. Formatting of documents. See the difference? Significant. Now that we know that, here's a deep work routine to allow you to be successful. Choose a location. For me, It's my basement or in my office. Choose a quiet spot is the emphasis. The duration, I suggest 30 minutes to start, more on that later. Upwards of 90 minutes, take 5-minute breaks every 30 minutes. You want some structure. Phone and notifications will all be set to do not disturb. Then I have a goal. For example, I'm going to write an episode for my podcast. What are some requirements? Might want to have a glass of water, my headphones to block out the noise, pen, pad, computer, etc. We're flowing. You got the anti version, the all out, deep work principles. Phase 3 is to become your consigliere. All right. Jordan Peterson writes about this in his book, The 12 Rules to Life. Treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. In short, this can be summed up as the following. Individuals often fail to take care of themselves, all out, anti-you, while displaying an effective care for the state of others, be them their friends, families, strangers, or pets. So to begin, consigliere, some self-vulnerability is a great start. Know that you might be closer to the all-out anti-version of you than the all-in greatest you. That's just the truth. And that's perfectly fine and why you are here in the first place. But vulnerability allows you to practice some self-acceptance and begin the process of healing. So be vulnerable enough to know it's going to take some time, maybe forever. Be vulnerable enough to know there's going to be some bad days and you're not intended to be perfect. Be vulnerable enough to know that you're going to make mistakes. Admit your weaknesses and current limitations, then get to work. And once you accept self-vulnerability, then what I would say, consigliere, is treat yourself like a business and get into that consultant consigliere mode. How would you advise yourself? Consult yourself on what is working for you and only you. Don't sell yourself on someone else's dreams. Enter your danger zone. Push your limits physically, emotionally, and spiritually, or whatever mode you're seeking. Do the dirty work. Don't gloss over the granulars of the process because that is what creates your foundation. Celebrate your mistakes. There's growth in failure, and the cliche is Edison took 1,000 tries, or as he says, 1,000 steps to create the light bulb. Make the adjustments. How you start is never how you finish. Take what you've learned, trim the fat, and build on what works. Then give yourself quarterly reviews. Measure, measure, measure. You must know you're making progress. Celebrate the small wins. Never lose sight of the end state, which is that all-in, non-anti-you. All right. We have the all-out anti-you covered. Deep work principles covered. Consigliere, which is consulting yourself, taking care of yourself, covered. Now we move on to the next, which is phase 4. Raise your average versus going cold turkey. I alluded to this earlier. Agree that this is a lifestyle goal, and therefore you literally won't succeed at all overnight. It's not possible. This is not a movie. Life doesn't work on your expedited desires and timeline. And since that is a reasonable truth, you are pushing towards all in. As I referenced earlier, an hour a day to being the next version of yourself is more than enough. But you can even work on the all in you starting with as little as 15 minutes. I feel like a fucking commercial. And essentially raise your average. If you could think of a runner or a weightlifter or a cyclist, good luck going out day one and running a marathon or bench pressing 2 times your weight or entering the Tour de France. Not happening. It would be absolute madness to think that you could day one do that at those extreme levels. So if you took just one step today because of where you are, all out anti-you, then that is progress. If you want to be in better shape and you just walk the block, progress. You want to get into some self-help, consigliere, Read 5 pages today. Progress. You did 1 push-up. Progress. The idea is to raise your average, and in doing so, you simultaneously create patterns you can emotionally handle and not risk burning out too much too quick. Because the idea of cold turkey and just being this new you all day, every day now is akin to an alcoholic putting the bottle down. Going all in after being all out comes with withdrawals. And those create massive emotional swings of self-doubt, insecurities, and indecision because you'll question yourself. Not good. Ultimately, you'll have many points of failure along the way. Too much too fast is no bueno. So focus on raising your average. Do it more over the course of time and focus on the compound effect. It's an investment. Building even to an hour a day is 365 hours over the year. And there are studies that suggest just 18 minutes per day of any focused exercise, like playing a piano, will put you in the top 5% of people doing the same exercise. Reminder, this is a lifestyle, and the only question comes down to is this: if you consider this is a war of attrition, can you outlast the old you to become the new all-in you? We got anti-all out, deep work, consigliati, raise your average. And let's just close with the why. This is not even a phase. And the why for me is less about death. I know how that sounds. And your only opportunity at life, which is promoted constantly, particularly in the self-help, self-improvement space. And personally, I totally get it. I use it as a motivating factor daily. But here's the thing about death and any super high and common statistic. Because we all die and we all know it, and because it's just that common, it actually loses its appeal. The psychoanalysis human behavior element says it's essentially not personal enough. It's just a big stat. But knowing we all die and that most won't go all in is to then also realize we don't all live. We won't all experience nirvana, true bliss, and self-actualization. And to me, that is a shame. And the primary reason to not achieving always comes down to commitment, level of effort, and sacrifice. So you are either all in or all out. You choose. Change your mind, change your life. I am who I say I am. Stay rich.